welcome to Janette's TV Podcast. I'm your host, Janette Burke. Today, we're coming at you again virtually from the Santa Barbara Film Festival with another of its movie screening features, Park Avenue, at its U.S. premiere. This official selection at the festival is a film that centers around the character Charlotte, who runs away from her controlling husband and, being fed up with her life of wrangling cattle in Saskatchewan, returns to her eccentric mother Kit's New York City apartment, rediscovering the life she left behind. In the process, mother and daughter must face buried truths. The film stars Katherine Waterston and Fiona Shaw, as well as Chaske Spencer from The Twilight Zone. And it's directed by British actress, film director, and writer Gaby Dellal, whose work includes Three Generations, Football, On a Clear Day, and Netflix's You. Now, before we welcome Gaby and start today's interview, I want to remind you that if you haven't already done so, please take a moment to subscribe to Janette's TV Podcast YouTube channel for more great lifestyle and entertainment content like this, geared towards savvy women over 40. The link is below. Gaby, how did you choose your two lead characters for this film, and why did you choose them? What do you look for in actors to make leads?
That's an extraordinary question. So Fiona Shaw plays Kit in Park Avenue.
Correct.
And I needed someone with great acting chops and able to understand the eclectic nature of this character that I drew from many women that I've known in my life. And because it's so universal, this film is about mothers and daughters. I think that all actresses can relate in some way and draw on their own mother, whether she's a character like I've drawn or not. But it's a natural sentiment to have a mother who's obviously older than you, that you either have resisted or you have loved tenderly. And I think that as I brought it into the writing, I think Fiona Shaw brought it into her performance. So,
okay, well, what about our other lead, Katherine?
So Katherine plays the estranged daughter of Fiona Shaw, and she has she feels like she was raised in Park Avenue, and that was very important to me. So although she had to play a girl that had rejected Park Avenue at the age of 25 and gone to live in Saskatchewan.
Saskatchewan. I was told Alberta.
Well, no, it's Saskatchewan just because I like the name, the word.
Okay.
And so she moves over there and she becomes a cowgirl. So when we meet her, she is this early 40s cowgirl who rides horses and looks after cattle. And I think that Katherine was able to meld the two, the kind of haughty, entitled, kind of slightly moneyed upbringing from living on Park Avenue, but a young woman that rejected all that. And so she's kind of rebellious and wild. And you see that she's got the same wildness that her mother possesses. So that's what I looked in both of them. It doesn't necessarily mean they look alike, but you see the wild, eccentric Irish American in Fiona Shaw, and then you meet her daughter and you see that she would drive any daughter mad, but at the same time, you know, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So they were similar, not similar.
Yeah. So a couple of other questions then. What made you, well, you said you like Saskatchewan, but do you have any personal experience of being in Saskatchewan or Canada and the Western frontier?
No, I don't, but I did make a film in Alberta and fell in love with the landscape and the enormousness of the landscape and the unbelievable weather. And so for me, it represented something quite dynamic and quite rejecting of the concrete jungle that is New York. So the idea that she rejects New York and then drives north and goes to live with her Germanic husband, and puts up with it and loves the wildness and the open expanse. But then she discovers that she can't do it anymore. And she drives south at the beginning of the movie back to New York. So there was the idea that you can take New York out of the girl, but you can't. Well, is it you can take the girl out of New York, but you can't take New York out the
Yeah.
girl?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
the saying.
Yeah.
So now let's delve a little bit deeper into, the characters and how they interact with each other, the mother-daughter theme. What do you want viewers to take away from this movie about the intricate and sometimes very complicated relationship between mother and daughter?
So I think that it universally is a very complicated relationship. I have sons, so I don't have that mother-daughter relationship, but I am a daughter. And I know that for years I rejected my mother. She was everything that I rebelled against. She was super glamorous, very beautiful. She always put lipstick on without a mirror, and she wore incredible clothes, all of which you see in the movie. And personally, in my life story, I rejected all that. So I was a tomboy. I never wore makeup. I wasn't into clothes. And so, in a way, I was interested in that relationship, but no matter what, in the end, it's your mother and you have deep, deep love for her. And that's what we discover. We discover two people who are very estranged and cold at the beginning. So when the daughter turns up unexpectedly and unannounced at the mother's apartment, the mother opens the door and says, "Am I dying?" The irony being she is dying, but she doesn't want her daughter to know. She doesn't want to be disturbed. And the daughter has to say, "Mom, aren't you going to give me a hug?" So the notion is that they haven't seen each other for over a year. And the daughter has a secret, which is she wants to leave her husband. And the mother
Right. So
has a
let's
secret.
delve into that a little bit. Isn't she running away from her husband? Was
She
he not?
is.
Yes. So there's a bit of an abuse story there.
Well, what I show a little bit is that he was, yes, he's abusive, but we don't spend very much time with them on the ranch. But we just see at the very beginning of the film, I always had this fantasy that I'd make a film called Park Avenue and that I'd put the initial title over a beautiful landscape, cowboy landscape. So I like the sort of that it wasn't Park Avenue when you initially see it. But she drives south and she gets home, and she very quickly, even though she keeps her cowboy kind of look, and it becomes chicer and chicer as she steals her mother's clothes and puts them with her own kind of cowboy clothes. And you
Mhm,
see that she's very like the mother. And
mhm,
but what you discover is that the mother kind of arranged this marriage because there's a backstory that is relevant but not relevant, which is that she had a daughter out of wedlock at a very young age. And if you dig deep, you could discover that it was with a senator's son, and that it was a scandal in New York that had to be covered over, and hence the mother she was seeing another guy, but not really when she got pregnant with actually a kind of young man, younger than her, and the scandal would have been too much. So the mother covers everything, and pays for her and this older guy to move to oh, to move to Canada. And so that's really why she's there. And that's why they've done a deal, which is you had a baby out of wedlock. You could get into a real lot of trouble because he was a young kind of senator's junkie son. And he was underage. But I don't go into that. It's just a
mhm.
notion that she did something wrong and that her mother arranged for it to go away. And so when she finally decides to leave this guy, she's very conflicted, but she's waited till her daughter has gone to boarding school. So she's lived this kind of frigid relationship with the guy that she didn't really want to be with, but raising her daughter. And then eventually she gets her daughter out of the ranch and out of, away from the dad by sending her to boarding school. And then that's her moment to flee. But she
So
doesn't want her mum to tell her to go back. And her mother sniffs it out and knows her daughter's a liar. And she says, you've always been a great liar. You've always been a terrible liar, says the mother to the daughter. And the daughter says, you've always been a great one. So you realize that they're very similar. And so what we discover as we watch the film is that the mother's got secrets as well. So the film is really about secrets and lies. And what you take away from the film is that possibly now, in this day and age, better to tell the truth, better to tell your children exactly what you did, what happened. And in this case, she discovers that her father didn't die of a heart attack when she was 9. He blew his brains out. But she doesn't discover that till the end of the film.
Wow. So there's a lot of stuff here, and a couple of questions I have is that, did you draw on anything personal to put into this
Yeah,
story?
I always draw. I think everybody who tells stories draws on their own personal experience. So I met a lady in the park, in Central Park, and it was very much modeled on her and my fantasy of this woman. So I used to walk my dogs with her, and she was tall and beautiful and looked like Katherine Hepburn. And I met her leant up against the tree, screaming, "Don't ever have chemotherapy. I feel like shit." And I befriended her and gave her my arm. And then over a period of 2 years, I would meet her in the park and discover more and more about her. And she was amazing. And it turned out she was a very beautiful model in her day. And I met her over a series of walks and really got inspired to write this about Kit. And then it intertwined with a character that was a lot more like my mother. And
And
so,
what is your personal connection to New York, since you seem to have a lot of history there?
so I made a movie there called Three Generations with Naomi Watts and Susan Sarandon and Elle Fanning about three women from 3 different generations where the youngest wants to become a boy. And I made it before, a long time ago when suddenly the whole world was opening up about trans people and the whole argument and acceptance began. And that's when I made it. But I didn't make that from experience, but I made that from the point of view of a mother who always turns to her children to realize that they're brought on this earth to teach us. And you think they're going to be just like you, but in fact, they're not. And you learn from them because you love them no matter what. But sometimes it's hard. And the same with this story. My kids say, "Oh, Mum, you've made the same story." It isn't. First of all, the other story was set downtown. This is set uptown. This is really in a different New York landscape, the more beautiful Upper East Side, elegant, Paris-like landscape of New York City and Central Park on the Upper East Side with the amazing buildings. And I was very interested in the building culture and the doorman culture. And what these 2 women have when they spend this small amount of time together is a linchpin, which is Anders, the doorman, who Charlotte, the daughter, has grown up with because his father was the doorman when she was growing up, and he was the kid of the doorman, and they used to spend a lot of time together. And then when she returns, she ends up having an affair with him. And the mother knows exactly what's going on and is irritated because Anders has become her last gentleman caller, so to speak. And what I mean by that is he was her companion. He was, as she calls him, her date to watch the football game. He'd find her remote control when she needed it. And he basically loved Kit the older woman, like a mom, really, because he'd grown up with her. And so he was this devoted, amazing, young, handsome man that Charlotte ends up finding herself through because they have this sort of wonderful love affair, brief love affair
So
during her.
what do you want to say personally as a former actress and now a director, filmmaker? What do you want to tell women about finding themselves in their own identity and coming into a place where they really feel like they're comfortable in their own skin? Because that is really what's happening with Charlotte too, isn't it? That she is coming into her own, she's expressing herself, she's leaving a poor marriage. And
It's
in the
not,
course of being,
she has to get away from under her mother's thumb. So it's about finding independence and about not
what do you have to say
repeating.
about that? About women
So,
who do how to go
well, I
about
think it's very hard when you have a powerful, strong parent, be it a woman, a mother, or a father. It's
that?
very hard to grow up and shirk all the responsibilities and the past that's been put upon your shoulders. It's very hard to kind of shake your head like you get out of a river and you are able to operate as you and not you as a member of your family of origin. So it's about independence. And what happens is she dares eventually, three-quarters of the way through the film, tell her mother that she wants a divorce. And her mother's adamant and says, go home. And it's really about finding home. And home isn't Park Avenue, but home is her own identity. And, they end up, she discovers her mother's dying and she looks after her mother while she's dying in the last part of the film. And there's a resolution
Okay,
between them.
that's good. So where can we see the film?
Well, you could see it on Sunday night, which is tomorrow at the Santa Barbara Film Festival at
Great.
Film
For its
Centre
official US premiere, I might add.
1. And then it's going to Dublin, which is on February the 21st. And it's being sold by Global Screen. And at the moment, we haven't distributed it because it's just starting its journey.
So does that mean it will eventually end up on either a streaming platform or in the theaters?
I'd rather it ended up in the theatres, and I think that Fiona Shaw deserves many accolades, and I hope that she finds them through this film, because she's an amazing actor, as is Katherine, as is Chaske Spencer too, who plays the doorman. And there's a motley crew of amazing older ladies who form the community in the 960 Park Avenue that also are a great supporting cast. But I think that the experience we had yesterday when we screened at the Santa Barbara Film Festival was one of great elation because all the humor really played and the film has a certain pace. So it feels a bit like a foreign film, even though it's English speaking. But I think I allow for the cadences and the silences to let the film breathe because there are a lot of bombs that are dropped and a lot of shocking things and a lot of cobwebs that have finally flushed out in a very old relationship. And you need that space. And I think that it was peppered with a lot of humor because she is outrageous, the mother, Kit. And I think that the American audience happily got all the jokes and really, reveled in the outlandish, outrageous behavior of the mother and then warmed to her. So although she's hard and tough and eccentric, you warm to her because there's a charm to her. And you go on the journey with the daughter and you feel for the daughter who's underneath her mother's thumb. And then you watch the daughter come out and blossom, if you like. And at the end,
I was just thinking of that very word, blossom.
yeah,
So we were
yeah,
on the same wavelength there. Well,
good.
this sounds like an incredible film. And what do you have any other projects on the go at the moment or some things that you would like to talk
Yes,
about?
I do. I have my next film is called The Handover, and it's a divorce film.
Oh,
And and it's about two a couple, a man and a woman, who are divorced at the beginning of the movie, and by the end of the movie, you are willing them to get back together, and they have one son who they ferry backwards and forwards. So they live in different cities. One lives in New York and the other moves to Korea. And there's a bit of Australia, and it's about the ferrying in airports of a child who spends part of his time with his father and part of his time with his mother, and the agony that all three are in. So that's hopefully the next film that I'm working on. And I've got a TV show, You, that comes out in April on Netflix.
Oh, yes. You. Is that season 3?
I think it's season 5. It's the end season. It's the last season.
Oh,
And it's
yes.
very
I think I've
exciting. Yeah.
season 5. Okay. I believe I've watched that, You, at least
Yeah.
3 seasons of it. So
Yeah. So there you
that's
go.
a very interesting tale. So, I
And
like
it's with,
that. I like the fact that you really delve deep into what I would call savvy women topics. As you know, this is a show geared towards savvy women over 40. And it seems to me that you take on these topics with almost all your projects, things that they're actually going through or things that they have to deal with.
yeah.
Which,
So I think we're the best people to tell those stories because we've been through it, whether it's actual or whether we just draw from the people we know and the older women I love. So there were a few older women. You get to an age in your life and then you love much older or much younger. So that's interesting,
and also
and you
because
learn from both.
the topics you deal with in your subject matter hit home, and they're very relevant. It would spark, I would think, a lot of women, including the savvy women in this audience, of my audience, to go and see your films,
Okay.
particularly the new one that's out, Park Avenue, and your project after that, and maybe tune in to Netflix too for season 5 of You.
Yeah.
All right, so I think we're just going to close out now, and I just want to give you an opportunity to say anything you haven't already said that you would like to say.
No, I've enjoyed this interview and I look forward to you, to your comments and seeing the
Okay,
film.
well, thank you. I've enjoyed it too. Thanks for being with us today on Janette's TV podcast. I'm your host, Janette Burke, signing off. Please remember to like, comment, and share all our posts with your fellow savvy women over 40. And remember, you can support us in one of 2 ways. A donation to our Patreon account, that link is below. No donation is too big or too small as we continue to bring you the best lifestyle and entertainment content on the web geared towards savvy women over 40. You can also purchase a Janette's TV podcast t-shirt or sweatshirt in your favorite color and size with either the JTV podcast logo and tagline or an inspirational saying made by me and a previous guest in a previous episode. The choice is yours. All orders contain shipping and handling and are conveniently sent straight to your front door. Again, this is Janette Burke signing off. Until next time, continue to be savvy and fabulous.